Radhe Radhe, everyone. Rameshwari Prapannaham Gurupadar Vindayo Tasya Preranaya Tasya Divyadesham Vadamyaham Vande Navaghanashyamam Pītukauṣeya Vasasam Sanandam Sundaram Shuddham Shri Krishnam Prakriteha Param Namah Kamalnabhaya Namah Kamalmaline Namah Kamalpadaya Namaste Kamalekshana Yo Brahmanam Vidhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tagvam Ha Devamatma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. Spiritually inquisitive, divine souls, let us chant a few lines of the bhajan that I have chosen to speak on today. Chalat Sakhi Latapatat Nandalal. This bhajan is from Prem Ras Madira, Shri Krishna Bal Leela Madhuri, composed by Jagadguru Dham Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj. So here, in the words of the Gopi, Chalat Sakhi Latapatat Nandalal, Shri Maharaj says, O Sakhi, O friend, Nandalal, the son of Nand, has started toddling a little, has started taking his first few steps. Hale hale dharani dharat pag bhole se gopal chalat sakhi. And the innocent little Gopal looks so sweet when he places his tiny feet on the ground very carefully, taking small steps. Chalat chalat chuti jaat peet pat hansati sabay brajbal. And the scene when his pitambar, tied around his waist, falls off and the maidens of Braj start laughing. This scene is truly spectacular. It is breathtaking. Puni puni pahiravati pitambar yashumati hot nihal. And Mother Yashoda, of course, is beside herself with joy as she enjoys putting the pitambar around his waist again and again, every time it falls off. So this is a Leela of Lord Krishna with Mother Yashoda, depicting motherly feelings towards baby Krishna. Jahan dekhat mati chupke te darat mukh tatkal. Little Kanhaiya, wherever he sees dust or dirt on the ground, escaping everyone's eye, he quickly picks it up and puts it in his mouth stealthily, very quietly. Tarjani te kripalu dar pavat mukh mati lakhi gwal. And Shri Maharaj says, when the other cowherd boys happen to see him doing that, putting mud in his mouth, they try to scare him by shaking their forefingers. In other words, that they will tell on him to Mother Yashoda. So this is briefly the meaning of this bhajan, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but let us first chant a few lines. Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi. Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi. Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi. Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi. Chalat Sakhi. Chalat Sakhi. Chalat Sakhi. Chalat Sakhi. Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi. Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi. Hale hale dharani dharat pag. 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 Bhole se go नंदलाल चलत सखी
लटपटात नंदलाल चलत सखी
चलत चलत छुटी जात पीत पट
चलत चलत छूटी जात पीत पट
चलत चलत छुटी जात पीत पट
चलत चलत छूटी जात पीत पट
हंसती सबे ब्रजबाल चलत सखी
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 लटपटात नंदलाल चलत सखी
लटपटात नंदलाल चलत सखी
पुनि पुनि पहिरावती पीतांबर
पुनि पुनि पहिरावती पीतांबर
पुनि पुनि पहिरावती पीतांबर
पुनि पुनि पहिरावती पीतांबर
यशोमती होत निहाल चलत सखी
यशोमती होती निहाल चलत सखी
यशोमती होत निहाल चलत सखी
यशोमती होती निहाल चलत सखी
चलत सखी
चलत सखी
चलत सखी
चलत सखी
भोले से गोपाल चलत सखी
भोले से गोपाल Chalat Sakhi
Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi
Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi
Chalat Sakhi
Chalat Sakhi
Chalat Sakhi
Chalat Sakhi
बोले बाल गोपाल कन्हैया लाल की
Jai.
So this bhajan describes what is called Vatsalya Bhav, in which one loves God as a parent loves a child. And as you know, there are various bhavs through which we can establish a loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of God. In fact, this is one of the conditions mentioned in the scriptures that must be fulfilled for one who truly wishes to practice devotion, that is, to do sadhana bhakti. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rup Goswami Ji writes, Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadhyanavritam anukulena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. He specifies 3 conditions that must be fulfilled for one who wishes to practice preparatory devotion, sadhana bhakti. So I'll briefly go over the first 2 as well. Anyabhilashita shunyam, which means renunciation of all desires except the desire for God. And these desires are 4 in number: dharma, arth, kam, and moksha. The desire for dharma, righteousness, the desire for wealth, the desire for pleasure, and the desire for liberation. So the first 3 are collectively known by the name of bhukti. So bhukti is the desire for happiness right from this material world to the abode of Brahma. In other words, worldly pleasures as well as celestial pleasures. And that is called bhukti. And the 4th desire is the desire for liberation, to attain oneness with God. And that is known by the name of mukti. So renunciation of both bhukti and mukti. That is the first condition. And the second condition to be fulfilled, because it is only when we remove all desires, all worldly desires from our heart, that we will be able to truly practice devotion. In other words, love God, develop our love for God. And the second condition, mentioned by Rup Goswami, is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, by the way, as you know, is the greatest scripture on devotion. Bhakti. So the second condition, Jnana Karmadya Navritam. Rup Goswami Ji tells us that devotion must also be free of hindrances, of rites and rituals. All religions, this is a very common practice, the performance of rites and rituals amongst all religions. In spiritual, in religion, it is essential for a devotee to observe Vedic rites and rituals. However, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu tells us that a devotee is not held guilty if he fails to perform Vedic rites and rituals. But he is held guilty he is considered guilty of offense if he fails to duly follow the. And there's a logic behind this, and the logic is this. You see, we perform, or people perform, ritualistic actions mostly to repent for sins or wrongdoings. But the scriptures tell us, first of all, a true devotee cannot perform any wrong actions, and even if he does, secondly, even if he does not need to resort to rites and rituals to repent, because devotion, bhakti itself, is the best and the most effective form of repentance. As the Bhagavatam states, Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayana agham dhunvanti katsnena. Thus, that just as dewdrops, drops of moisture that accumulate on cool surfaces at night due to the atmospheric vapor, just as dewdrops dry up immediately in the morning sunshine, in the same way, the sins of those who practice devotion are destroyed. And the very seed of ignorance is rooted out of their minds forever, states the Bhav. And still there are others who claim that a devotee must also take the shelter of the path of knowledge. But then again, in the words of Saint Tulsidas Ji, Tehi adheen jnana vijnana. He tells us that devotion is not under the control of knowledge. In fact, knowledge is under the control of devotion, and not vice versa. Bhakti swatantra sakal sukh khani. Furthermore, devotion, bhakti swatantra sakal sukh khani. Devotion is independent. Bhakti is independent of both ritualistic actions as well as knowledge. In fact, Gyan, goal of God realization or supreme happiness through the path of ritualistic actions, that is karma, because that only leads to celestial abodes, the happiness one attains through celestial abodes, which is temporary and limited, or through the path of knowledge. Unless these paths are followed side by side with devotion. So that is the second condition. And the third condition, the third and the final condition to be fulfilled for one who wishes to practice devotion is anukulen krishnanu shilanam bhakti ruttama, which leads us to today's topic. And in other words, it is not God whom we must love. Now you may ask, if we should not worship God, then whom should we worship? The devil? No, of course not. Let me clarify. You see, it is impossible to love the Almighty, the all-powerful God. Why? Because according to the scriptures, Aishwaryasya samagrasya dharmasya yashasah shriyah jnana vairagya yoshchaiva shanana bhagaitirana. 6.5.47 Vishnu Puran. This is the definition given in the scriptures of the Supreme Personality of God. In other words, God possesses 6 opulences. Aishwarya, meaning splendor, magnificence. God is magnificent. Vairya, strength. He possesses unlimited powers. Yash, he possesses virtue and fame. He possesses unlimited virtues. Shri, meaning prosperity, wealth. He's the proprietor of all wealth. And Gyan, unlimited knowledge, and Vairagya, dispassion or detachment. So how can we help but be in awe, be in wonder of such a personality in whom these 6 majestic qualities are not only possessed simultaneously, but that are developed in an unlimited degree. And where there is awe, deep reverence, deep wonder, there is fear. And where there is fear, there cannot be love. So we see even in the world, to give you an example, that an extremely poor or unattractive man does not dare to even think of marrying someone rich and beautiful. In the same way, how can we ignorant living beings of this material world ever hope to establish a friendly relationship with the Almighty, the omnipotent, all-powerful, omnipresent, all-pervading, omniscient, all-knowing Lord? Lord of the innumerable universes, who can create innumerable universes by merely smiling and cause their dissolution by merely holding his breath. Therefore, to facilitate our loving him, to make it easier for us to love him, the scriptures and saints have established 5 ways of worshiping him. These are known as 5 rasas, nectars or bhavs, or sentiments, one may say. The saints suggest to us that we must not look at God as God and ourselves very distant from him, from God, due to the fact that we are eternally ignorant beings. No, but to worship him by establishing one of these relationships with him, one of these bhavs or rasas. There are 5 bhavs or rasas or sentiments you've heard many times. Shantras, meaning the nectar obtained by loving God as the subjects, by loving Lord Krishna as the subjects love their king. Dasiras, the nectar, the bliss obtained in loving him as a servant loves a master. Sakhi Bhav, in which one loves Lord Krishna as one loves a friend. Vatsalya Bhav, in which one loves him as a parent loves a child. And Madhuri Bhav, in which one loves him as a lover loves a beloved. So today we will take a look at Vatsalya Bhav, loving him in the mode of a parent. Since we all love, we all enjoy listening to the Leelas of Lord Krishna, especially those performed with Mother Yashoda when he was a child, stealing butter, telling lies, eating mud, stealing the hearts of the gopis, and so on. So before we do that, let us sing a couple more lines of this bhajan, and then we'll continue on. Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi.
Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi.
Chalat Sakhi.
Chalat Sakhi.
Latapatat Nandalal Chalat Sakhi.
Latapatat
देखत माटी चुप के ते
जहाँ देखत माटी चुप के ते
जहाँ देखत माटी चुप के ते
जहाँ देखत माटी चुप ते
डारत मुख तत्काल चलत सखी
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 तर जनी ते कृपालु डर पावत
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 मुख माटी लखी ग्वाल चलत सखी
मुख माटी लखी ग्वाल चलत सखी
मुख माटी तत्काल चलत सखी
मुख माटी लखी ग्वाल चलत सखी
लट पटात नंदलाल चलत सखी
लट पटात नंदलाल चलत सखी चलत सखी
चलत सखी
चलत सखी.
So let's talk about Vatsalya Ras and let's listen to some leelas. You've heard a lot of philosophy and I'm sure you'll enjoy listening to some Bal leelas. So the Vatsalya Bhav, in this Bhav, the devotee, once again, thinks of himself as the parent and Lord Krishna is the child. And if you loving leelas, instances will reveal to you the height of proximity, the height of nearness, closeness, and the authority which a devotee has over child Krishna in this Vatsalya Bhav. There's a beautiful little narration depicted by a saint by the name of Bilvamangal of Rajasthan in the following shloka. Krishna tvam patkim pathami nanure shastram kimugyayate tattvam kasya vibhoh sakas tribhuvanadhishashte napi kim jnanam bhakti ratho virakti ranaya kim mukti revastute dadhyadini bhajami maturuditam vakyam hareh patuvah. So this is a conversation between young Krishna and Mother Yashoda. Mother Yashoda says to child Krishna, Krishna tvam pat. My son, you are now 6 years old. You must go to school and study. Little Krishna asks, Kim pathami nanure? What should I study? Shastram, the scriptures. Kimu gyayate? Why should I study them? Tattvam, to attain true knowledge. Kasya, whose knowledge? Vibho, the knowledge of God. Sakaha, who is that God? Tribhuvanadhish, he is the Lord of the three universes. Tenapi kim, but why should I know that God? Jnanam bhakti ratho virakti, you will attain true knowledge. And from that knowledge you will attain devotion, and from devotion you will attain detachment. Anaya kim, then what? Asks little Krishna. Mukti, you will attain liberation. And Lord Krishna says cryingly, Dadhyadini bhajami. But Maya, I do not want any liberation. You can keep this liberation to yourself. All I want is some milk and curds. Let me depict another scene, another Leela. Once, Mother Yashoda caught Kanhaiya with both his hands in the butter pot. Now that he has been caught red-handed, what excuse can he give? And yet, when someone is caught stealing, he's forced to come up with a quick excuse. Who can come up with a better excuse than Lord Krishna? One who tops in stealing and telling lies. He has attained the upadhi, the title of Chor Jar Shiromani. In other words, the leader, the head, the chief of the thieves and flirts. So little Thakurji comes up with the following excuse. He says, Maya, you know, I'm wearing these bracelets made of Padma Ragmani, which is a precious stone that has a tendency of heating up very quickly. So when my bracelets became so hot that my wrists could not bear the heat from them, I had no choice but to dip them in the pot of butter in order to cool them. I wasn't stealing, Maya. So Thakurji is making an elaborate lie because he's afraid of Mother Yashoda's scolding. One day, Mother Yashoda caught Kanhaiya distributing butter to the monkeys. So not only does he distribute butter to his friends, but also to the monkeys. So when Thakurji saw Maya coming towards him, first of all, he pleaded innocence. No, Maya, I wasn't. But when that didn't work, then he ran away. But Mother Yashoda was quick this time. She ran after him with a stick in her hand. And when Thakurji saw the stick, he became so frightened that he started crying, which caused the kajal, the clerium in his eyes, to spread all over his face. So when Maya saw him crying so bitterly, she took pity on him. So instead of beating him with the stick, she decided to tie him to the mortar, to the ukal, with some string. Meanwhile, a Paramhans, as you know, is one who's ever absorbed in the bliss of the impersonal Brahm, God without name and form, he, in his samadhi, in his trance, with the grace of Shri Krishna, during his incarnation, he was witnessing this Leela, this scene. And seeing this, he remarked, Yashodaya samakapi devata nasti bhutale ulukhale yaya baddho muktido mukti michchati. He said, there is no one in this universe greater in merits, greater in fortune than Yashoda. Why? Because bound by whom? He who gives liberation to all is begging for his own liberation. Lord Krishna is the one who gives liberation. He releases us from the bondage of Maya forever and ever. And here, he's begging for his own liberation. He wants Maya to release him from the mortar. In the meantime, the great sage Naraji also heard about Lord Krishna's incarnation on earth. So he also came immediately down on earth and into the land of Braj. When he arrived at the house of Nanda and Yashoda, he saw young Krishna stamping his feet on the ground, wanting to be picked up by Yashoda. Naraji became confused. He thought, who is Brahm? The child or the woman? So after thinking about it for a long time, he came to the conclusion that the woman must be Brahm. Why? Because it is always the individual soul who's begging to go into the lap of the Supreme Soul and not vice versa. But then Naraji, of course, being omniscient, being all-knowing, he also knew that Brahma had manifested himself in the male form. So the child, Krishna, had to be the Supreme Lord of the universe. As the philosophy goes, first it is the individual soul who sheds tears to go into God's lap. But when that individual soul attains the seat of Yashoda, in other words, once he attains God and becomes a saint, then the situation is reversed. Then it is, in fact, the other way around. Then God sheds tears to go into the lap of the individual. As he states in the Bhagavatam, Aham bhakta paradhino hiya swatantra iva dvij sadhu bhirgrasta hirdayo bhaktair bhakta janapriyaha. 9th canto, 4th chapter, 63rd verse. Lord Krishna says, I'm absolutely independent. There's no one above him. He's above all. And yet, bhakti, the magic word, bhakti binds me and makes me dance in the same way as a puppeteer makes a puppet dance. Sadhu bhirgrasta hirdayo. Literally, it means that the devotees, my devotees or the saints, have consumed my heart. They have devoured my heart. And I am under the control of their love. In other words, the devotees govern the heart of the Supreme Lord. Such is the magical spell of his own most intimate, most personal power, bhakti, the power of devotion. Anyways, getting back to our story, when Maya saw young Krishna crying so bitterly, she took pity on him. She untied him and picked him up. After that, she bathed him, put fresh clothes on him, and then she put a little black spot on his forehead to ward off the evil eye. And then she sent him out to play. So little Thakurji crawled outside on his hands and knees, and there, who does he see? He sees the gopis selling their pots of curd and butter. And they were yelling out, curd for sale, butter for sale. But when the gopis saw Thakurji, they were so overcome with divine bliss, with supreme bliss, that instead of yelling out curd for sale, butter for sale, they started yelling out Damodar for sale, Sham Sundar for sale, Madhav for sale. Vikretu kamakhil gop kanya murari padar pit chitta vritti dadhyadikam mohavashad vochat Govinda Damodar Madhaveti. Krishna Karnamrit. Then what happened? Then the gopis' love for Lord Krishna reached to such a level of intensity that they were soon lost in a complete trance. Consequently, the pots of butter and curd they were carrying on their heads fell down on the ground. And now the mud on the ground got mixed with the milk, and the curd on the ground got mixed with the earth on the ground, and there was mud all over. So Lord Krishna, again, Thakurji thought, oh, wonder what a perfect opportunity to roll around in the mud. So without wasting a single moment, he proceeded to cover himself from head to toe with mud. In the meantime, Yashoda came outside to check on Kanhaiya. And when she saw him rolling around in the mud, you can imagine how angry she got. She got so angry that she said, Idani manga makshali rachitam chanulepanam idani mevate Krishna dhuli dhu saritam vapu. Sarvabhaum Vasudev Bhattacharya. Mother Yashoda said, I just gave you a bath and put fresh clothes on you just over half an hour ago, and look at what you have done to yourself. It seems to me that you must have been a pig in your last life, since you like mud so much. And Lord Krishna couldn't help but smile at these words of Mother Yashoda. But he didn't smile in front of her. He turned his back towards her and then smiled. Because you see, he had, in fact, incarnated in the form of a pig in his previous life, known as Varha Avatar. So there are innumerable such leelas, episodes in the life history, in the lifetime of Lord Krishna, which depict the beauty and the nectar, the sweetness of Vatsalya ras. Once, seeing Mother Yashoda churning the curd, Thakurji also insisted that he would try his hand at churning. But Maya scolded him, O Kanua, leave the churner alone. You're too young to help with the churning. Again, hearing these words from Mother Yashoda, Lord Krishna suddenly remembered himself churning the entire Chir Sagar, the ocean of milk. As you know, you must know, during one of the 10 main avatars, the second one is known as Kurma Avatar, in which Lord Krishna took the form of a tortoise, a large turtle. And with the cooperation of the Asuras and the Devtas, there was Samudra Manthan, the churning of the ocean of milk, in order to extract Amrit, the nectar of immortality. Anyway, it's a long story. And Mount Mandara was used as the churning rod, and the great serpent Vasuki was offered himself to be used as the churning rope in an attempt to extract this tonic of immortality. So Thakurji suddenly remembered himself churning the entire Chir Sagar, but he kept quiet. Because otherwise, if Maya found out the reality about him, how would he be able to give her the nectar of Vatsalya? But he didn't stop there. When Mother Yashoda refused to let him churn the curd, he started asking for some butter to eat. But how could Maya give him butter before churning the curd? So poor Thakurji waited patiently for Maya to finish her work. But when she finished her work, she returned to some other household chores. Now Thakurji had been waiting patiently for a suitable opportunity to start his mischievous works again. So as soon as Yashoda left the room, he went straight to the butter pot and started stealing the butter, started eating butter. So while he was stealing the butter, he suddenly looked at one of the pillars in the room and saw his own reflection in it. Now bear in mind that Nanda Baba, the father of Lord Krishna, was extremely rich. Nanda Baba was the chief of the Yadav clan. To give you an idea of the wealth that he possessed, it is enough to say that he owned 900,000 cows. Sounds unbelievable. I'm just wondering where they were kept. 900,000 cows. So anyways, and the pillars, his house, he had a magnificent house, and the pillars of the house were not ordinary pillars, nor were they marble pillars. They were made of precious gems and stones. So when young Krishna, therefore, looked at one of the pillars in the room, he saw his own reflection in it. However, he was too young to understand that he's looking at his own reflection. He thought it was an intruder, an outsider who had come and who could complain to Mother Yashoda about his stealing the butter. So he tries to make a deal with the stranger who happens to be himself. There are some beautiful shlokas. I will recite them next time. So listen to the deal that he tries to make with the stranger. So Lord Krishna is now addressing himself. He says, "Look, Bhaiya, here's what we will do. I will give you half the butter, but you have to make a promise not to breathe a word of this to Maya." But when he saw the intruder continuing to steal butter, because that's what he himself was doing, he was eating and talking at the same time, he became annoyed and worried and decided to complain to Mother Yashoda about him. So little Thakurji, imagine, went running to Mother Yashoda, "Maya, Maya, there's a little boy who has come into our house uninvited, and he is stealing our butter. I told him not to steal my Maya's butter, but he didn't listen to me. Instead, he got angry at me for trying to stop him. Maya, don't think that I'm greedy for butter. Never think I'm greedy for butter. I was just trying to stop this little boy from stealing your butter." Such a wonderful Leela. So we see how God, as the Supreme Lord, between God as the child and the devotee as the parent, there's so much love, so much nectarian bliss. There's such great love that both become unconscious of their respective identities. Lord Krishna has completely forgotten who he is, the Supreme Lord of the universe. And Mother Yashoda also is completely, absolutely absorbed in the sentiments of Vatsalya Bhav. Mother Yashoda exercises the same right over child Krishna as a mother does over her child in the material world. And she could never think, not even in her dream, that God has descended to this earth in the form of her son. However, there was a time when she came very close to finding out the truth. And this is another wonderful Leela. I'm sure you've seen pictures of this Leela with Thakurji's mouth wide open with all these planets flying around in his mouth while Mother Yashoda is looking into, checking his mouth. So one day Thakurji was playing outside and Maya suspected that he had been eating dirt again. He had been eating earth and decided to check into his mouth. But Thakurji, of course, refused to open his mouth. Consequently, Maya had to show him the stick again. However, Thakurji, so seeing the stick, Thakurji thought it would be wise to open his mouth. And yet, he knew he was going to be in trouble either way, because if he opened his mouth, Maya would see the earth in his mouth, the mud in his mouth, and if he refused to open, her suspicion would be confirmed. So, what happened? In an attempt to save himself, he quickly thought of something. In fact, his most personal power, Yog Maya, intervened to protect him. So he thought of something. So when Maya looked into his mouth, she nearly fainted because she saw in his mouth innumerable universes, mountains, planets, oceans, living beings, and so on. And she started trembling out of fear. When Thakurji saw Maya shaking out of fear, he realized what had happened. He realized his mistake. His purpose is always to give pleasure to his devotees, is to give pleasure to Maya, to distract her, to give pleasure to her, but at the same time distract her, not to frighten her. So Thakurji quickly reassumed his form of a child and said, Maya, look, I did not eat any earth. By then, the dirt had disappeared. With his divine power, he could make anything happen. Kartum akartum anyatha kartum samartha. So, he said, look, Maya, I did not eat any earth. In the meantime, Mother Yashoda also recovered from her so-called illusionary vision. She thought maybe she had been hallucinating all along. So this is it for today. What I've given you is a glimpse of Vatsalya Ras. So there's infinite bliss in all the bhavs. Of course, the highest bhav is the Madhurya Ras, which you all know about. So with these words, Bole Bal Gopal Kanaya Lal Ki, Srimad Sadguru Sarkar Ki, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.